So today we wanted to talk a little bit about data, about numbers, and to show with very simple cases and a practical case represented by the company, by Jane's company, how data is important but needs to be dealt with a critical thinking approach, because it can be misleading, it can be correct, but misleading. And so I think we can start our fireside chat. I will give you just a very quick, oops, where should I aim at? Maybe it's off. There we go. Okay, so just a few words about Links Foundation, where I work as a CTO, Chief Technology Officer. Links Foundation is part of a bigger group, which is Compagnia di San Paolo Group, which is a foundation that all of you know about. And we are, in this big family, we represent the technological arm. So we study digital technologies, we study data all the time, and this is the reason why I'm so happy to be here and talk about this topic. And we work with academia on one side and with the market and companies on the other one. And we are paying a lot of attention to social enterprises and social businesses because of the type of family we are part of. So it's a pleasure to be here and talk about this. And even more, we have an example, a very practical and interesting example, which is represented by Jane's company, which she will present right now.
Thank you and good morning. It's a pleasure to talk about this topic, not because we are experts, but because we are practicing some of the aspects of using data to lead our relationships and to lead the business. And we see both sides of it, when you use it correctly and when you don't use it correctly. So I will introduce my company, Exotic EPZ, or EPZ, depending on who was your English teacher. It's a macadamia company, a macadamia nuts processing and export company that is based in Nairobi, Kenya. So our business model, if I could just move it, maybe first to say it's a women-led company. We are 3 women that started this company 6 years ago in a highly male-dominated sector. Out of 30 licensed exporters and processors of macadamia nuts, we are the only company that is 100% women-owned. So we were driven by purpose and passion to bridge the gap between smallholder farmers and the produce that they are producing. There are over 200,000 farmers in Kenya that are producing macadamia nuts, and become a bridge to high-value markets for them, and therefore be able to empower them in the way of bringing incomes to their households, but also create jobs in the business and along the value chain. We are very strong on social and economic impacts focus. But also we know we are set up to deliver value for our shareholders, our stakeholders, and all that. So the point I want to make is that for us, we recognize very early, for us to be able to deliver on our mission, we need to use data. So our mission is to sustainably supply our customers with high quality and safe food, whilst empowering the smallholder farmers and contributing to environmental sustainability. That's why we are set up. So to be able to deliver on this, we recognize that there are standards that we have to follow. And these standards are various, depending on whom the stakeholder is in this case. If, be it the investors, because we have investors that are investing in the business, be it the customer, we are very customer focused. And you realize our customers are global customers. So our biggest market is the United States of America, but we are also supplying some countries in Europe and a little bit to China. So be it those customers, be it the employees within the business, be it the mission to support the environment, sustainability, we need, there are standards that are there and that need to be followed to show that you're actually delivering on that, to convince all these stakeholders. So we haven't been perfect, but maybe just to a snippet, 1 minute to see our model, how it's structured. So we source from the farmers who are harvesting in about 12 counties in Kenya. We bring the products to the factory where we process, and we are warehousing and exporting to the various destinations. So that's basically the model. Yeah, and this is what I was talking about. So the standards. So these standards must be backed. For example, if you look at a customer who is one of our key stakeholders or key focus, there are very many laws that are coming up in the countries where we are exporting to, and all these laws, there are standards that are monitored and that we have to ensure compliance, and not just have to, but we want to. And you ask why, because, for example, if we are not complying with the standards that have to do with the food safety or food requirements in, say, US or in Europe, then we are running certain risks, isn't it? So we are running risks of causing harm, to those that are going to consume the food. And at the second level, we are running the harm of losing the customers themselves, losing those relationships, undermining the trust relationships that we have with those customers. So if you look at the aspect of investors, so we have the social goal in the business as a social responsible company, and our investors have needs, that they have, or the purpose or the mission that is driving them, which is not just the investment returns. I can tell you they're interested in the returns, but also on the social impact we've been talking about since we started. And so how are you going to convince them, convince ourselves, and convince the investors and give them that return around impact? It's going to come from data. A few minutes we have just listened to the presentation on Sophia. Once those numbers convincing, isn't it? Yeah, and she involved us to get the numbers right. And so the story is best told through numbers, and numbers can mislead as well. This is what we're chatting about this morning with Edoardo. So if you're thinking about employees, the standards that we are following, and we do get certification for setting up those systems and standards, are going to help to motivate the employees if we are using data. If they're doing production, for example, and we are picking data through the production system, and there is performance, because there's monitoring of performance, then that in itself is a motivational factor for the employees. But it can work the other way around, right? So, and it goes on and on, depending on what angle of mission or purpose the business is set up for. So it's about continuous improvement. That's the line I had at the bottom there, and being effective, using data to communicate effectively. So I have given one example here. One of the interests of the investors and of the shareholders is returns, right? So businesses must be viable for them to be able to support all the other goals, isn't it? So one of the things we are monitoring is, of course, the profitability of the business, and we are looking, how do we accelerate profitability? So we have metrics that we are checking and that we are keeping numbers for. And so we collect the data, we manage the data, we secure the data, we analyze the data, and we present the data to the various stakeholders, be it investors or the management boards that we have. So we do have what we call cash acceleration cycle. So you're looking at the top line, you're looking at the bottom line. I know you all are doing that, and you're looking at how to shorten this cycle. So I'll not dwell on that much, but all these processes have metrics that you would be following. If you're looking at the manufacturing processes, then we are having certain key performance metrics that we are following, and that we have people that are accountable for them. But of course, data can be manipulated, and this is, Edoardo will be speaking shortly about data that can be misleading. Yeah, so it's a wide topic, not the best to discuss after a very lovely night yesterday. But, businesses are facing crisis moments. Right now, as we speak this year, there's a lot of recession, global recession, and there's a book here that I'm reading. I just started looking at it, and it's by Jim Collins. I would encourage you to look out for this book because it has a lot of ideas that have made businesses survive through crisis moments because of use of certain methods, using data. So most businesses, when they're in crisis, like many could be in crisis, what do? They look up to authorities, they look to peers for advice, they look for the norms. What are the norms and standards that businesses follow? So he did a study across businesses, and one thing he recommends, and from the research, is that businesses that grew 10 times are those that were using empirical evidence. They were using data that they were generating from the business or from even research beyond their business. They were not relying on whim or advices. Advices are good, but they grew because they were able to grow their muscle, their strength, their mental independence and creativity by use of data. So maybe I'll let you, I'm sure you have had a look at the statements there, but that is what it is talking about. And Edoardo will continue with the chart from there.
Thank you very much. I think that the nice thing about data is that today we are surrounded by data, and even when we do not expect there's something happening about data and with data. And when we were talking before this talk, we were focusing on Jane's business because it already gives us a lot of examples of how data can be used effectively in a company. And I also normally focus on the what I call the value chain of data. Data at some point is collected, is generated, data is processed, and at some point it is presented. And all three phases have very important opportunity for doing good or for doing bad. The very beginning is collecting data. If you want to base your decisions or help your decision using data, you definitely need to have good quality data. You need to know what to measure, you need to know how to measure, and you need to be sure that the measurement is accurate. Because whatever sophisticated method you have for processing and for showing the information, to presenting the information, if the source is bad, the rest is not relevant at all, and you will have a garbage as a result. And data can be presented in a way that is very effective. And I was really happy to have Ndeye present her company this morning, because that was a great example of, and we didn't agree about this, but I'm very happy to acknowledge that she was very successful with just a few numbers and a few actions. She vehicled a message to us that will stick with us for the rest of our lives. Just give a number, just give a percentage, involve the audience. How many people are here? How many women are here? Okay, one out of three will be encountering this. This is very simple. 1 minute. Where is Ndeye? I don't see her, but I wanted to thank her. There you go. I wanted to thank you because you gave us a very good example of how data can be used in a good way. So collecting the data is actually what we do as Links Foundation, because that's where most of the technology, the hardware and the sensors and stuff that you want to measure comes into the picture. And so we are very, very careful about studying how devices or input sources can be guaranteed, can be made reliable. That's the very beginning of everything. And as I said before, if that fails, all the rest fails as well. But also processing of data. Once you have collected the data, so we start from the point that, from the base point that we have good data and clean data. At that point, you need to process that information. And the way you process information can be misleading or can be effective, depending on the goal that you want to reach. And even more, because that's the moment when you interact with the user or the destination of the data, the way you present the data can be good or can be bad. So we had a good example. We have another good example, which is Jane's company, to whom I wanted to ask something about how they actually use data. We have seen a very complex supply chain. And imagine how many points in that supply chain can be measured, tested, and checked to provide the end user of her products the assurance that what they're buying is actually a good product, a safe, a healthy product, and also makes good to the people and to whoever worked to that product. But there are also examples that are where data can also be used in a bad way. Okay, not necessarily be wrong at the very beginning, but it can be used in a bad way. Like sometimes people talk about correlation. They try to prove that something is causing something else. And believe it or not, the amount of data that we have today available today is so big that if you look carefully into it, you can basically prove anything. Like two examples that I presented here, which are obviously wrong. So I selected them exactly to show you. So this, according to these graphs, you could imagine or announce that there is a correlation between the number of high school graduates versus the donut consumption of the population. These are actual data. These are right, correct data, but they're just presented in a opportunistic way because you want to vehicle to the users a specific message. The other one is even more interesting. It says video game sales versus nuclear energy production. You know, with that diagram, you could talk to people and say, okay, you see the bad effect of video game sales. It makes the nuclear energy production increase. Whether or not you want to sponsor nuclear energy production, that's not the point. But this is a way data can be, and the basic data, the data that is behind these graphs is actually correct. The correlation is not there, is wrong, and it's been, these are examples of course, but it's been built on purpose. So there's another example, and then I want to pass the stage to Jane again. Also the way you present the data can be changed based on what you want or you pretend to announce and to show to your audience. Like in that case, on the right, you see an example of a diagram in which a specific time period has been selected where the diagram was going in a good way. So you can say, you see, we are doing great. But if you go back and see what happened 10 or 20 years ago, you see that we are actually not doing good at all because we are in a negative situation compared to what was a few years ago. And the same thing, that's even more subtle, the thing on the diagram on the left, where data is exactly the same in the two diagrams. But in the one on the left, you see that the y-axis has been selected in a way that it starts at 3.14%. So the difference between 3.14 and 3.15 is huge because it takes the whole diagram. So it looks like there's an incredible growth, while the same data on the diagram on the right shows that it was basically constant, whatever you want to represent here. Okay. So data is interesting, is very important. It can be manipulated. So the message that I wanted to leave to you today is be careful. Be critical whenever you look at data. Try to understand a little more than the headlines, the big diagram, the awesome pictures. Try to do a little more investigation and try to understand whether or not what they're telling you is actually the real situation. And the food industry and the sector where Jane's company is operating is one where these messages, these techniques and these concepts are super important because you're talking to people about safe food, about health, about ethical working, about social enterprises as well. So my question to her would be, what are the sectors in your production chain where you make most use of data and you get the best out of data? If you're collecting information and how you can make sure that the data is relevant and presented in the right way.
Yeah, so the most important aspect of business, as you rightly said, is my kind of business is safety, food safety. For the obvious reason, because food is for human consumption, and if it's presented in a way that is not quality, it's not safe, then it can have implications on the consumer, isn't it? And that's why countries are setting the standards I was talking about to protect the consumers and ensure that the food that is coming to them is safe. And this is a big thing in the world right now, isn't it? It's the issue of pesticides and the levels of consumption of pesticides, of use, and how much is coming into the market. And so there are limits that are set within the standards that we comply with, just to ensure that there is even understanding of what safe food is. So the biggest area that we track data that is useful to us is in production. And production operations, will start right from the farmers. So we're working with close to 10,000 smallholder farmers who are producing the food, the raw material that we are using to process and export and pack and export. So we must track the safety of that food. And there are metrics. I won't get to the depths of the type of metrics, but they are both physical characteristics that we are looking at, but also microbiological characteristics of the food. So there are key metrics that we are tracking right from the farm. What do you call it? Off gate, farm gate. All the way to the collection centers that we have, all the way to when the value addition processes start in the production operations. And so we have what we call process flows and operating procedures as companies are expected to have, which have metrics that we are tracking. And we are doing the analysis internally of the whole value addition process, but also we are using third-party laboratories to verify, for the very reason that you said, it depends on how data is presented, isn't it? And who is presenting it and what's their motivation. An employee could have had issues, coming from home, and that day they're gloomy, they're moody, and they just don't collect data or record it properly. So that's the kind of verification processes that we set to ensure that our standards are good and consistently.
And do you make use of data mostly inside the company to track the production and monitor the production, or do you also vehicle messages to the end users? Do you have something on the end product that people find on the market to let them understand that you are actually applying all these careful techniques in order to provide them with a very healthy food?
Yes, so it's about also how effectively we communicate the findings or the content of the food that we're producing. So using the third-party certifications, analysis, first of all, they go to an external lab, they do the sampling, and they take it and test like 17 types of tests, microbiological and physical characteristics of the food. And it's sampled out, throughout. So they produce what we call certificate of analysis. Those in the food sector would recognize that, and that's the international accredited companies that are doing that. So we use that document to communicate the content of our food and how safe the food is.
Fantastic. Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. I think, round of applause. Okay. So I see time is almost up, so maybe we can end. I hope we leave you with just a few messages. Data is important. Data must be reasoned on, and be careful whenever you see big announcements and big things. Just do a little investigation. It's not necessarily wrong, but do your own research, and you will be safe. Thank you very much.